Welcome back everybody, my name is Tucker, and today's video is the beginning of the NBA team previews for the 2019-20 season. I decided to start these with about 8 weeks or so left until the regular season begins, so that way I can be sure to get in every single team and then still have time to focus on some other videos as well. The way this is going to work is I'm going to focus first on the Western Conference in today's video, and then go to the East and just go back and forth by whichever team I feel like covering in that particular video. I'm going to be talking about additions and subtractions to the team from the offseason, certain players to watch, expectations, as well as my own predictions. Now, even if it isn't your team that I'm covering in a particular video, I would still encourage you to check it out just to see where all of these other teams are at around the league going into this upcoming season. And yes, as you can see with the what's next offseason videos that I did in the past, I will actually stick to it and cover all 30 teams. So be sure to subscribe if you want to see more of these. And with all that said, with very lengthy intro out of the way, today's video is going to be covering the Phoenix Suns. And this is a team that I've talked about a lot on the channel and haven't very often had good things to say about them, and it's for good reason. They were 19-63 last year, which was tied for the second worst record in the league, and now have a new head coach in Monty Williams, who will be the Suns' 5th different coach since 2015. This is a team that hasn't won 25 games in any of the last 4 seasons, as I love to bring up, and their win total has dropped each of the last 2 years. So things aren't great at all, but let's look at least and see what they have going for them this season. So let's go ahead and talk about the offseason, and first the subtractions to the team. The first is TJ Warren, who they traded away along with a pick, essentially just for cap relief, and I've talked about this before. In my opinion, this is one of the worst trades of the entire offseason. The Suns lost a key member of their wing rotation who was coming off of a career shooting year and didn't get anything back in return. But again, I've already talked about that. They also lost Josh Jackson, who they traded away. I was never really a big fan of him as an NBA caliber player anyway. He's someone that puts up okay stats later in the year when other teams aren't really trying, but I wasn't really that high on him really even being important at all in the league, or really even being on a roster within the next couple of seasons. So that's not a huge deal, but it does further thin out their wing rotation, and they'll need some other guys at those positions to step up. In terms of additions, there are actually a couple of good ones in this section for Phoenix. The first is Dario Saric, who I'm really interested to see in an environment that maybe fits his game a little bit more at this point, a younger team that's going to be trying out some different things and is going to just try to figure out what they have in Saric. I'm interested to see him progress, hopefully be given more opportunities, specifically as a playmaker. Should fit well alongside DeAndre Ayton so long as he shoots well, and should definitely provide them value as a floor spacer and occasional playmaker. But he is a restricted free agent this offseason, so I would expect them to really find out what they have so that they can know how much money they really want to invest in him. Next up is Ricky Rubio, who again, I've talked about before. I'm not a huge fan of the contract that he signed, but he should be a good playmaker for this team and a solid defender, and should take some pressure off of Devin Booker, and is certainly the best point guard that they've had outside of Eric Bledsoe in the last couple of years, and they finally have a legit NBA caliber point guard alongside Devin Booker, which should do wonders for not only him, but DeAndre Ayton and Saric. But again, just wasn't a big fan of the contract, which is why I kind of gave it a bad grade in the offseason. Next up is Cameron Johnson, who they drafted in the first round. Should be a good shooter, and if he can defend, he gives them good size on the wing and could be a good complementary option. Obviously not exactly what you want out of a lottery pick, but they kind of already have the guys like Booker and Ayton that should be their stars. So as long as they can continue to build up their roster with players like Cameron Johnson that can shoot and hopefully defend, he should be a good piece for them. Another guy they drafted, Jerome, probably one of my favorite draft picks of the year, has really good size and skill to play either guard spot, is a good shooter and playmaker, and just adds good depth to this team in a position that they definitely needed some. And then beyond that, just some front court depth. Traded for Aaron Baines, added Frank Kaminsky, just good front court depth behind Saric and Ayton, so good signings there. So overall, I thought their offseason was solid when you take away the Warren trade and the Rubio signing. Those things were pretty bad, but outside of those two things, I think it was solid, and a lot of how it looks in the end will depend on how well Saric and Cameron Johnson play. But as we look towards this season, there are some things to like for this Suns team. They do have two of the best young players in the league at their respective positions in Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, and both should be improved at both ends of the floor. And for the first time in a while, they have an actual NBA starting lineup that should work with Rubio, Booker, Kelly Oubre, Saric, and Ayton, along with depth like Tyler Johnson, Cameron Johnson, Mikal Bridges, Jerome, Kaminsky, and Baines. That's a legitimate NBA team from top to bottom, a team that can actually compete on a nightly basis so long as they are healthy. Obviously some wild cards in there with how young a lot of those players are, but still it's an important bit of progress for Phoenix to have an actual good team, or at least a good starting team on the floor to begin games. So on paper, this should be the best team that they've had from top to bottom at any point in the last 4 years, but that doesn't mean that there aren't some concerns. This is a team that's going to rely a ton on young players, and we still have to kind of wait and see how Rubio fits in and how well he plays, and none of the young guys really know what it's like to win at the NBA level outside of Kelly Oubre's time in Washington, and it would take a pretty big leap in team success from their most prominent players, being Booker and Ayton, to make a big jump in the standings. But I guess at some point with this group, it does have to happen eventually if you want to look at it from a positive perspective. Moving on now to a player to watch, in my opinion, and that is Mikal Bridges. And there's some positives and negatives to this. He definitely showed some flashes last year as a two-way defender, specifically on the defensive end, but he does still need to show consistency as a shooter, and he does have some wing competition this year in Oubre and the recently drafted Cameron Johnson. And if he starts losing minutes to those guys, he could start to lose some confidence and be buried at the end of the bench. And it's not a great sign for him that the team felt the need to bring in Johnson just a year after bringing in Bridges in the draft. And obviously they brought in Josh Jackson prior to that. So they keep trying to find answers at the wing spot. So I'm a little bit concerned that maybe they're not as high on Bridges as they were when they drafted him last year. However, if he shows improvement, he would further boost their wing rotation, and especially on the perimeter as well, and could be a big key to their season if him and Johnson and Oubre are all plus defenders and plus players on both ends of the floor at the wing spot. One other guy that I do want to mention as a player to watch, and you could probably tell that I'm excited about him just based off how I was talking about him earlier, and that's Dario Saric. And I'm really interested to see how he fits in Phoenix, though I thought the same in Minnesota, and he was never really utilized in a big way there. And maybe I should take that as a sign that he's not going to be anything special, but I'm still holding out hope personally that he can be something for this Suns team and in the NBA as a whole, other than just a floor spacing four-man. I wouldn't mind seeing him as a second unit facilitator and creator, maybe come off the bench and start two wings along with Rubio, Booker, and Ayton, maybe starting Kelly Oubre and Bridges or Cameron Johnson in that starting lineup, and then letting Saric come off the bench. Wouldn't mind seeing that just to see what they have. I really think that he could be something significant that they can add to their young core alongside of all the other guys that they have, and it could be a really important piece for them to have someone that just does something different than pretty much everybody else on the roster. I don't know how much they're going to prioritize him in the front court, especially if he's starting again. They could just use him as a floor spacer because they do have Ayton there that's going to take up a lot of the front court creation kind of stuff. So I wouldn't be entirely surprised if it's just another year like last year for Saric. But I don't know, I'm really interested in, again, just player to watch here. Now, in terms of expectations for the Phoenix Suns, in my opinion, you cannot expect them to be a playoff team. I understand that we're kind of waiting on this jump that we've been waiting on for a while now from Phoenix in terms of the wins department, and it just hasn't happened yet, and I can't realistically project playoff contention for this team simply because they haven't shown to be anything close to that in the past 4 years. I have to actually see it. I have to see how well Rubio fits with this team. I have to see legitimate winning play improvement from guys like Devin, Booker, DeAndre Ayton. I have to see how all this other depth and all of their other young players come together. I can't just blindly go into this season and say that they're going to be competing for the playoffs, especially in a Western Conference that's going to be extremely competitive. And I understand that I've outlined the positives, and I do think that they'll be improved this season. That's an important bit of progress for Phoenix because of how the last 4 years have gone. But again, the West, in my opinion, is just too strong, and I don't think that they're there yet. Maybe they'll get there in the next couple of seasons, but right now I don't think that I can expect them to be contending for a playoff spot in the West. In terms of my own predictions, I'm putting them between 30 to 33 wins and legit all-star candidacy for both Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, depending on how well they play, depending on how the other all-star teams kind of shake out. I think statistically, those guys are going to be really good, and the win improvement that I hope they're going to show, and I'm predicting they're going to show, between 30 and 33 wins, even though that doesn't seem like a big number, I think it makes their all-star candidacy a little bit more legit and a bigger possibility for those two guys because of the team's success. But there you have it. That is going to be my 2019-20 NBA season preview for the Phoenix Suns. Like I said, I'm going to be doing all 30 teams. There's 29 more of these coming. I'm also going to talk about all kinds of stuff to expect for the season, all-star teams, all NBA teams, award race predictions, all that stuff. We're definitely in the season of NBA previews because, like I said, 8 weeks might sound like a long time, but when you have to put together all these different previews and all this different content, you got to start pretty early to make sure you get it all out in time, and we are closer than you might think to the start of the NBA season. So that is going to be the end of today's video. Like I said, once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. If you'd like to see more videos just like this, then be sure to subscribe as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.